So when it comes to our vacuum gasket cord, like any pair of boots or a cast iron skillet, a good breaking in and seasoning will help your fixtures go a long way. And in this video, I'm gonna cover 4 scenarios that make working with our vacuum gasket a breeze. So number 1, prep. Now, prepping your vacuum gasket seems like it should just work out of the box, but that's not actually true. If you were to examine the vacuum gasket and measure it, you would notice that it has a very wide tolerance that it's delivered in. Now, this is frustrating when we machinists are trying to deal with thousandths of an inch. Now, what I like to do is a stretching trick that helps you right size the vacuum gasket. Now, in most cases, it's gonna come in oversized, and this particular piece measures 0.145, which is right at the upper limit of our acceptable gasket tolerance range. So why does this happen? Well, first of all, this can happen post-cure. It can happen in transit from our facility to yours. It can be affected by weather. Even moisture content can affect it. But bringing it into a nice diameter that's within a compliance with your fixture is very doable by the stretching technique. So if you take the gasket itself, and you can do this with any section, don't do too long of a section because when you go to stretch it, your arms won't be able to stretch it right. But I like to work in about 12 to 18 inch sections. So in this case, I like to take it and I begin to stretch it, and there's a natural point where it stops stretching. Anything beyond this is gonna be a yield situation where it's just gonna cause the internal air cells to kind of collapse in on each other. And what this does is 2 things. It seasons it so it's a lot more flexible and pliable, and it also reduces the diameter. So with this trick, I'm going to stretch it. There's a natural stopping point, and I go just about maybe a half an inch to 1 inch more beyond that natural stopping point. Now, when I measure this again a second time, it comes out to 0.13, which is a perfect diameter for the gasket slot that we've cut. So next up, let's talk best practices in inserting the gasket in a fixture or one of our chucks. Now, fresh out of the box, it is squeaky clean and dry. Now, if you have one of our starter packages that's also clean and dry, getting these two to interact together is gonna be a bit of a struggle. Now, you can do a few things. You can just get a little coolant and spread it onto the gasket. And then once in place, don't use your fingers to tuck it into the groove. Instead, get the edge of a credit card, maybe a piece of scrap material, piece of plastic, to press lengthwise on the gasket itself, which gives a more consistent and uniform seating in the gasket groove. If you don't do this, you're gonna have natural peaks and valleys on which your part is going to ride on, and those valleys will leak air so that you don't pull vacuum from the first time you turn on your vacuum power unit. Now, as an added bonus, check the description in this video for a link to a 3D printed gasket insertion tool that you can 3D print at your shop. Next up is compression set. Now, what is it? Well, compression set is a natural characteristic of most materials. The softer, the more susceptible. So compression set means that when a material is under a load or a compression, when that's released, it tends to retain its shape. So with vacuum gasket, you'll notice this after pulling a part off, and instead of nice round profiles on the top crest of the gasket, it's gonna have a flatter profile. Now, this isn't problematic at all because keep in mind, it's flat under vacuum power. But when you remove it and put a new part on, this flattened profile sometimes makes it difficult to begin drawing a vacuum on the next part. So to do this, what I recommend is having 2 sets of identical lengths of gasket. So when one starts to see compression set being a problem, go ahead and pull that out, let it just sit over time, could be 10, 15, 20 minutes. It will go back to its normal round shape. In the meantime, you'll replace the gasket with a new identical set and run it for many, many cycles until you see that compression set is giving you a few more headaches than you're comfortable with. And finally, let's talk about aging and end of life. So when does it become a factor or an issue where you actually need to throw away your gasket. Now, we've made our gasket material to be specifically formulated for a coolant-rich environment, but the concentration in the coolant is what can affect the life of the gasket. Other factors might be mechanical. For example, if you are sliding a part on the gasket and it starts to roll it, and specifically rolling it out of the groove, applying vacuum again where it gets pinched and then split, that is definitely a must replace piece of gasket. Another scenario might be where the chemical composition of the coolant starts to attack the surface and it gets tacky, gummy, or even starts to flake off. That is not a root problem, that's a symptom in which you should probably check your coolant concentration to make sure it's not way above a percentage that's recommended by the coolant manufacturer. So when it comes to answering how long does gasket last, there's no solid answer to that because there's too many factors like number of cycles under load, exposure to coolant, exposure to an unused condition like a shelf life. But in general, a bag of gasket that is sitting on a shelf for 1 to 2 years is perfectly fine. Once you go over that 24-month mark, you might want to consider getting a fresh bag from us directly. And keep in mind, you can buy gasket on Amazon Prime or directly from us 24/7 at store.pearsonworkholding.com.